In the meantime, again, the title of the upcoming discussion, The End of One-Size-Fits-All Care. Are customized care models taking over? To talk about this, please welcome our experts here on the stage. Ryan Field, CEO at Kernel. Ryan is with us. Applause, please. Let's welcome Ryan. Ryan, the luxury of being the first one is that you choose the chair you prefer, whichever makes you most comfortable. Center stage it is. We have Michelle Carnahan, president at 30 Madison. Michelle is hopefully with us by now. If not, she will be joining us shortly. We have Sascha Günther, partner at Vorwerk Ventures, and the moderator, George Mitropoulos, healthcare and life sciences sector leader at EY Greece. Yes, everyone has been read out already. We're missing the moderator only, so if it's you, George, join us. Yes, absolutely. Let's welcome George with applause. He has the toughest role here. Not only is this the last panel before lunch, but also an interesting discussion to cover. Ready?
Yes.
Enjoy.
It's working. Hello, and thank you very much for joining this panel. We will discuss about customized care models. I'm George Mitropoulos. I'm heading the health services in EY in Southeast Europe. And today, we will see how customized care will change, hopefully, the future of health. Customized care is, in a nutshell, is a different way of treating, or not just treating, because also predicting and diagnosing the diseases by using data-driven insights, by using precision medicine, and emerging technologies. So today we have three esteemed guests from the full chain, I think, of what you would expect. So we have the fund, where they have the access to capital and they have the experience in identifying future technologies and beneficial technologies. We have the healthcare provider. They have the relationship with patients and they have the frontline experience, and they can therefore translate the customized care to clinical practices. And we have, of course, the manufacturer of solutions. They're in the front end of technology, and they are the developers of such customized care solutions. So guys, if you could, just for 1 minute each, to present yourselves. Let's start with Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Carnahan. I work for 30 Madison out of New York City, and I was in Europe visiting my son for U.S. Thanksgiving, and I just extended my vacation to come to the conference, so it's a pleasure to be here. I spent about 25 years in Big Pharma before moving to 30 Madison in 2020 as president, and at 30 Madison, we are really an integrated healthcare solution that is multifaceted conditions, low to high acuity. We're both a direct-to-consumer model and an enterprise model, and we really take the whole healthcare model and bring it together, all the way from personalized diagnosis to tailored treatment to ongoing condition management. So look forward to chatting with all of you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Field. I'm the CEO at Kernel. We're a Los Angeles-based neurotech startup. And so I got in yesterday, and I'm still adjusting to both the time and the weather here in Poland.
And the light.
And the light, yeah. So not used to getting out of sunny California too much. Anyhow, Kernel is really trying to solve two problems. So one that's been discussed a lot this morning already is access. And I would guess that most people in this room probably have never had the function of their brain measured. And part of the reason is there aren't tools that are accessible to clinicians and patients today that can be used to measure brain function. And so we've really started our company by developing the technology to very easily and efficiently measure the brain and its function. The second problem we're working on is really taking that technology we've built and applying it now to personalized care and precision neuromedicine. And specifically, we're focused on two disease areas. depression, where it's kind of the opposite of personalized medicine, and a good example of one-size-fits-all care, where it's really trial and error approaches, and dementia, where we're developing treatments and interventions without really measuring the underlying cognitive function directly. And so both of these worlds really rely on indirect measures of the things you care about, which is what's going on in the brain. And so those are kind of the two areas that we're working to build solutions for.
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is Sascha. I'm a partner at Vorwerk Ventures. It's an early stage venture capital firm, Berlin-based, so I'm used to the weather and to the light. What we do is basically, we invest early stage, seed Series A, 1 to 5 million, typically in business models that have a positive impact on people and the planet. And within the people bucket, we actually invest into a lot of digital health startups. For example, one is Avi Medical, a leading GP practice in Germany. It's formal skin, it's personalized skincare treatments, for example, and Nilo Health, mental health. So a couple of startups in that field. And yeah, that's about us.
Thank you, guys. So without further ado, let's start with some questions. I spent the last hour or so in the jury in startup panels, in startup competition, and pitches. And there's lots and lots and lots of around customized medicine, around customized care, as you would expect. Michelle, from your experience, what is the importance of offering customized or personalized care to patients?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about customized care for patients, think about what's the outcome for society and patients. So we always keep patient as our true north, and the outcome for us we want to look at is access and affordability along with health outcomes. And so we are constantly looking for ways to get to individuals who may not have access, but access isn't enough. What's the outcome? So let me just give you an example of one of our businesses, which is our Cove migraine business. Of our patients in Cove, where they come in, they're diagnosed, they are then treated and followed up, they get on the right medication treatment, they get on the right follow-up plan. Of the patients who choose to participate there, it is 50% of them live in a county that does not have a headache specialist in that area. So through our asynchronous model, we're providing access because we're getting where specialists aren't. And what enables us to do that is the asynchronous form of care. The other thing that enables that care is the integrated care, I think, becomes very important for customizable care. It's not enough just to get diagnosed and here you go. You need a plan, you need follow-up. That's why integration is so important. And then the third thing in the US that's really important to customizable care is, it's why we're a DTC and an enterprise company. In the US, so many people get their healthcare funded through their commercial plan, which is why we are part of a fee-for-service provider. So if you think about True North, what's the access? What's the outcome? Are you in underserved communities? Are you following a patient with a customizable plan all the way from diagnosis to ongoing condition management? And are you meeting with them where they are and how they engage in healthcare, whether it's directly as a consumer or whether it's through an employer?
So you're not talking about just precision or just personalized, but you're talking about access, wider access, and how it helps to provide access to people that maybe they don't have it. Thank you. So Ryan, do you think, are we there yet in terms of?
I think not, but it's something that I think we and many others are working on, and I really liked the point of meeting patients where they are. And I mentioned earlier on, one of our focuses is on providing access to kind of the technologies that can be used to really understand the brain more deeply, and how that relates to clinical care. And we're in the process right now. We're kind of at a research stage in understanding what are the signatures of the brain and what predictive value can we extract from each of them. And we're trying to prove out kind of this ability to meet patients where they are by working closely with clinicians. We have a handful of psychiatrists and neurologists that we work directly with. They're using our systems in their practice. So in their offices where their patients come in for their routine checkups and regular treatment, those clinicians are using our systems to collect the data there. And this is a really, I think, important milestone for us as a company, and maybe for the field more generally, is, this is kind of unheard of, being able to measure the brain in this way in, primary care or like, frontline type of situation. And so we have a lot of work to prove, sure. We need to build out the models and gather the data to train everything and show that we can actually make the predictions that we want to using this data. But I think we're taking those first steps to at least start with access and showing that you can collect this data where the patients are.
And Sascha, do you think there is opportunity for funding, for investors there? I mean, in customized care models and personalized health?
I personally believe there's a massive opportunity, because ultimately what we're all talking about is making care better for the patient ultimately, and making like this even more cheaper for the entire system. So I believe that personalized care is the ultimate vision that we all need to follow. However, I believe that we are at the very beginning of this journey, and we had this panel before that talked about interoperability. It's about basically getting access to that data, and I know you guys are from the US, where this is a little bit easier. I'm representing rather the European German ecosystem, where it's super tough to tap into that. So when we talk about holistic care, integrated care, it is a difficult endeavor, what you basically are on, because still most of the data is siloed. It is available, but it's siloed, and I think this is where we first need to start to build the infrastructure to actually access it. And this is also then the companies that we are looking at. So the companies that ultimately enable personalized care, because the consumer ultimately, I can get personalized shoes, I can personalize t-shirts, marketing efforts are personalized to me, but I don't get personalized treatments for whatever condition I have, even though I'm wearing those wearables and have the data available. Well, this is not something that I really understand. So we need to change that.
I just want to underscore that a little bit. Any panel I'm on where you talk about personalized care, precision medicine, it's not, we're in the first 3 miles of a marathon. It is not just about getting care. It's about getting care there that's better care. It's about then improving that care with data. And I think, our first goal at 30 Madison was get the care there, get the care where there isn't care. But then we want to see data that says, okay, there's a 50% improvement in headache severity. There's 50% less ER visits. Okay, now where do we take that data to really drive societal change in the treatment of migraines? It's such a long path, and I don't, it's not, in the US, healthcare is very expensive, but it can't just stop at, there was access, it got cheaper. For this dream to become a reality, we got to finish the marathon.
So building on that, do you see, and given what Sascha said, and this is something we hear in Europe, do you see any skepticism from the HCPs communities, from the doctors?
So we don't per se, and I think the reason we don't, and the other question I would ask and follow on to that in the U.S. is, do you see receptivity by the payers in the U.S., right? And look, I think that, listen, I was for 25 years, I was a part of Big Pharma, so I understand big healthcare. It's a pretty decent business, and a lot of times they aren't looking to upend it. But at the end of the day, we've taken a real approach at 30 Madison that it's through working together with those individuals versus we could have just been a direct-to-consumer model. So we've really gone out and partnered, not that it's always been easy, but that's been the approach we've taken, and we've found an openness to it, albeit with some skepticism. I don't know about you.
Yeah, we look at it from all 3 sides, right? Patients, payers, and providers, and you have to do something for all of them for a solution to be adopted, right? You want patients to get better faster. You want them to, be able to live better lives. You want to simplify the provider's workflow. You want to make sure that they have the information they need when they need it. And ultimately, you need to save the payers money and somehow. And that's a big part of why. So I'll give an example. We're focused on treatment-resistant depression. It's a group of patients who don't respond to pharmaceutical interventions for depression. They've failed 2 or more drugs. the success rate of responding to the next drug is something like 17%, really low success rate, so not good for the patients today. Providers, like they can diagnose depression, they can tell this person is depressed, but they have no data to say what prescription to give them next or what treatment to offer them next. So they're just lacking the information they need to make a decision. And then, at the end of the day, the payers are paying not just for these drugs, but sometimes for very expensive third and fourth line treatments that can cost $20,000 or more, and again, maybe get success rates of 50%. And so it's really trying to change those numbers all around where we can increase the response rate by choosing the right treatment for the right individual at the right time. And that's really what we're focused about. And where I think you need to get all three sides kind of something that they can work with.
Ultimately, though, I do think we're in the age of seeing, Andrew talked about it this morning in his presentation. I call it patient empowerment. He had a different name for it. But I do think it's a three-legged stool, but I do think I'm seeing more, particularly in the conditions we're in, that patients are empowered more. If they have a solution that works for them, it gets back to the employer. If they have one that doesn't, it gets back to the employer. To the employer, it gets back to the insurer, and I can always change who my insurer is if I'm not So I do think it is a three-legged stool. One of the things, though, that we are really trying to drive is patient empowerment through education. And so, we work in reproductive health. After the Supreme Court ruling in the US, the next day, we quadrupled our calls about contraception and Plan B. And a lot of it was about folks wanted to be educated on what are my options. And so I think that education and empowerment helps patients to know what they need to ask for and leads to better care, which leads to better outcomes, blah, 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 blah.
Thank you. So Ryan, as you in the part of the manufacturer, a traditional solution goes through all the research, clinical trials, approvals, blah, blah, blah. Is something which is more customized, does it have a harder time to go through this process? And if yes, I would like to also hear from Sascha whether this is a put-off for an investor.
All right. Well, I hope I give the right answer. So I would say yes, and especially being a company like Kernel, where we first had to build the technology in order to build the customized models to then better treat the patients. And so we had to overcome kind of validation of the technology itself, showing that you can measure the brain. And now we're kind of at this next phase of showing that we can measure biomarkers from the brain activity that are predictive of treatment response. And then with that, we have to take that then to the regulators and scope out the clinical trial and evidence generation needed to get approvals there, and also go to the payers and see the level of evidence generation we need. So as a technology company starting from really the ground up, we've had a really tough road, and it's taking us a long time, and we still have a pretty long road ahead. But I think that if we talk about the marathon, right? Like maybe we're in mile 3. And it's been all uphill so far. But at some point, we're going to get to the finish line, and we'll start to cruise a little bit and maybe feel comfortable with where we're at. So I think we just got to keep going. We need good partners. I have a group of great investors that have been supporting us so far, and I think it's really important to make sure you have good alignment with your investors, their expectations, and just being very transparent about how difficult the road ahead is and what progress we're making toward it.
I can just second that. I mean, from an investor perspective, first of all, it's super, or from founder perspective, to find the right investor is actually the most important part, because I think especially when money was cheap over the past years, there were a lot of tourist investors also in that space. We saw that influx of capital, especially in digital health, because it has so much promises and good returns. But ultimately now that the market is drying up, there are not that many investors running around in that field. And I think it's a good and a bad thing, because ultimately, it gives you a very selective group of investors that still are in that field, that have thesis on the market, and then really also understand the barriers of funding digital health companies, because I think this is not something that goes easily. There's the regulatory aspect to it. You need a lot of money, you need a lot of time. You need to be fine with not having this hockey stick curves that you typically expect from your consumer businesses. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to take into consideration as an investor in that field, which kind of other investors might be a little bit shied off by that. I understand. I mean, you're always competing with your with your idea with other companies, and some with a less regulatory environment ultimately might be beneficial there for the investor. But you as an investor, you always have to ask yourself, so what kind of stuff do you want to invest in? And I believe there's also kind of this purpose-driven investment that you should do, and I believe health is the perfect spot there. Besides climate, of course, I think health is something that has a true impact, and it takes longer, but I think ultimately it pays off not only like from a return side of things, but also for society.
Michel, does this delay reaches you as the front line at all? I mean, would you expect more a faster rate of solutions being available to the front line?
To faster solutions to patients?
Yeah. If we say that there's a layer of manufacturers that are producing innovative solutions, and maybe they're being delayed by policy, by evidence-based requirements, is that a delay for what reaches the patient?
No, I don't think there's really a delay. Because I think uptake takes some time anyway. And so far what we've experienced as we've rolled out new products or new solutions, or looking at things like Ryan is doing, I think it's keeping up with the pace at which we can execute against it, would be my answer.
It's probably slow, probably faster than that, as a matter of fact. Okay, so if we turn a bit to technology, and Brian, probably this is your native, obviously, field. What would you say about how technology has enabled the developments in the last few years, or delayed if we had ideas that could not be yet developed, and how the future of technology, as you see it coming, will help? I mean, we're listening about quantum computing for, I don't know, a decade now, and probably there's a decade ahead of us as well until we get some benefits.
Yeah, so I guess as the engineer on the panel, I can speak a little bit about technology. You know, we've been fortunate actually because the sensing modality we use light to measure the brain, and the reason we were able to build the technology we've built is because a very similar sensor architecture was integrated into the iPhone a couple of years ago. So they added these LiDAR sensors into the iPhone, which really just advanced the whole technology of time-of-flight-based imaging. And we kind of adapted that integration and that technology to measuring the brain. And we were able to reduce racks of equipment down to something that could be worn on the head. And we always describe this as kind of the mainframe to PC moment for this style of brain imaging. We took racks of equipment and we reduced it to something that an individual could hold or carry. And so we've really benefited from like hardware development and the technology on that front. And we're on the cusp of starting to benefit from all the advances in data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence that have been happening in the last few years. So one of our hypotheses has been that if you collect enough data around the brain, you'll really be able to start to form patterns of similar types of brain activity and who responds to what treatment or who needs to get treatment. To do that, you really need large data sets. And I mentioned early on that access was one of the first things that we solved for, because if you want to build large data sets, you need to have good access to the technology and ability to measure many people. This gets into diversity and inclusion, right? You want to make sure you have representative data sets, that they cover the full population, that, and to do that, you really need to have a low cost of acquiring that data. And so I would say that technology advances have allowed us to build things that are more affordable, more accessible, and have really positioned us in a place where we can start to apply advanced tools in the data science space to making sense of the brain.
So the immediate future?
I would say, we're like a couple of years out from having, I think, meaningful insights. We'll have some early readouts on our clinical studies next year in the first quarter. But, a couple of years before this is something that could be used in a clinical setting as a tool to help clinicians. So right now it'll stay in the research space for a little bit longer. it takes some time. Yeah.
Based on what you said, I want to amend my answer to my previous question about what is slowing down. One of the slow things, because I heard it a bunch this morning in the patient outcomes session, a little bit in Andrew's section, and that is around getting all this data and what do we do with it. So if data is in your house, right, you can kind of take care of what's in your house. But it's very difficult for me with EHRs, and I'm wanting to treat the patient holistically, right? Of how do we take all this data and use it to drive kind of societal outcomes and societal knowledge. So I would say the one thing that is slowing down, not what I can get from Ryan, because I think, but just what do we do once we get treating the patient and we have all of this data, and we have all this data, not only this patient who has all this data, but we have all this data now on these different conditions. Boy, that's an empty box. And we all sit and talk about data, but I have yet to see the solution, and I have yet in my mind, how do I corral all that and bring it someplace? And that is that's the big challenge.
An opportunity as well for a set of startups. So, Sascha, do you see ideas flowing? Do you see startups grasping these kind of opportunities and coming to you? Is there an abundance of ideas in healthcare, in the customized healthcare model?
Yeah, I think an abundance would be a little bit too much. I think it was said before that a lot of companies focus very specifically on specific indications, basically trying to solve them. And I think this is clear because once you start, you realize rather fast that you cannot go to your neighbor and ask for the data, but actually you have to look in every corner in your house and actually see where you can get some data. So a lot of solutions that we see are very clearly problem-focused and not the step back and basically looking at the overall picture. But there are a couple of endeavors out there that really try to do that, but it's super difficult to really get funding for that, because this is something where monetization ultimately is way far away in the future. You have to deal with the really unsexy parts like data privacy, basically with the regulator, trying to harmonize the incentives there, what you mentioned at the beginning between providers, payers, and patients. And ultimately, there are not that many. So there are a couple of out there. I mean, we saw the founder of DustLab before, who's trying to harmonize the infrastructure for the testing centers. We have here in the audience Julian from AV Medical, who are basically trying to really build a holistic care solution for the GP and for the patient to get holistic treatment. There are a couple of people out there that try it, but it could be more, actually.
Yeah, I want to come back to one thing is, as a startup who's focused on a specific, clinical area, it's been driven mostly by investors because investors want one clean story. And you build a new technology platform that can measure the brain, and the brain's at the center of so many conditions and so much of what we do and who we are. But no investor wants to hear, I can measure anything about the brain. Just give me money, I'm going to go out and do that. What they want to hear is I'm measuring one condition, and that condition is a $10 billion market, and give me 4 or 5 years, and we'll get there. I guess kind of put it back on you that if you want to see more platform, more technologies, not you specifically, but the broader investor community kind of has to be comfortable with funding these opportunities that are platforms and encouraging them to explore rather than keeping them so narrowly focused. Because I've gone through a round of fundraising this year, which has been very difficult but successful in the end. It's not a good story to say we built a platform and we can do anything.
No, you're entirely right. I entirely agree to that. I mean, often it's also from investors that are not familiar with the space that want to hear basically the large vision behind everything of it. But of course, you need to start somewhere. It's super difficult to have like 10 pots on the stove and then try to cook everything perfectly. I totally agree to that. You need to start with one specific problem that you're solving. But often I see that founders forget to pitch the greater idea behind it, right? So I think it's about making very clear like how you will achieve this ultimate vision and ultimate goal in 10 years and what are the steps to achieve that. And you're completely right. Some markets alone are large enough that basically you need to solve that first until you get to the next layer. But this is what we all agreed upon before. It's a marathon, right? And we're in the first 3 miles currently, maybe even. And yeah, we need to start somewhere.
That's very, very interesting, and it's a long-held debate, of course, between the startups and the investors. But it's more true in the health sector than in any other sectors, of course. Anyway, so Ryan, with your scientific hat on, or the fact that you're representing an organization that has researchers, scientific researchers, do you see any risks in trying to build personalized strategies? Because maybe we don't entirely or fully understand the viability of patients.
Yeah, and I just want to say no offense. It's a friendly.
Come on, we will start lighting things up here. So.
And so yes, obviously there are risks, and that's why this is a regulated environment, right? And you need to build the evidence and really, understand what the limitations of your technology are and what the data can say before you go out and try and say it.
But sorry, let me interrupt you. Is the framework though adequate? Because this was designed for mass treatments, but now we're talking about specialized, individualized, personalized. Is the framework of having clinical trials, et cetera, adequate?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at oncology, for example, I think they've done a good job of showing what precision medicine can look like. So I think there are lessons that, obviously, in the mental health or like neuropsychiatric space, it's different than oncology. But I think there are lessons that can be learned from what was done there. And the processes, the evidence that was built, the way that it was presented to regulators, the way it was justified with payers, like a lot of these precision oncology drugs get premium reimbursement rates because they're so effective once they've identified the right genes and the right target for the treatment. And so I think there's a lot that we can just learn from there. We don't have to reinvent things just because we're moving from precision oncology to precision neuromedicine to precision, whatever the next area that we want to apply the precision label to. So I think we continue to reuse frameworks and try and understand things from those who have come before, so we're not starting over.
Okay, thank you. So if we have a few more minutes, just from each one of you, what are the main challenges? Although we kind of heard from Ryan and Sascha, well, a part of their challenges. But Michelle, what are the main challenges you see in making customized care the norm?
Yeah, I mean, I want to start with opportunities and then go to challenges real quick.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So opportunities, we've recently grown to about 500,000 patients in women's health. And in the investor world right now, in the scientific world right now, I'm really seeing this real energy around women's health. And so I think there is a huge opportunity there to do some things. I just want to start with that. Look, the big challenge to get to mile 26 is that whole data challenge, I think, because I think it's a lot of throwing around ideas and what can technology do to get there, but I've not seen anything that really brings all of this healthcare data outside of your house together, and so that's it. And then the second thing applicable to US audience is this whole enterprise understanding and where does the payer fit in a more empowered patient environment. So those would be the two challenges, but I'm more excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can all agree that precision healthcare or customized care is something we all want, and I think the challenge to get there, yes, there's a data challenge. Yes, there is like some evidence building challenges. You have to prove things out, and especially as we move forward, I expect more machine learning and AI to be a part of customized care. Right? There's going to be so many different data streams that are coming together in order to make these personalized decisions. And I think one of the challenges will be validating that and showing how robust it can be over time, over populations, over everyone. So I think those are kind of the areas where my thoughts around challenges are.
Building up on what you guys said, it's basically, I think the main challenge, and also want to phrase it rather as an opportunity, is to have really enough young people to focus on the problems that we have. There are a lot of problems that are still need to be solved. And I think people shouldn't be shied away because it's a highly regulated space and maybe it takes longer than expected. I think it's worth the journey, and just try it more, do it, and don't shy away.
So you're not talking just about investors, you're talking about talent to be shifted towards this sector.
Exactly, because this is the challenge for me as an investor ultimately, is I need to see enough qualified deal flow that really I believe in. And the more I see, I think the chances, because it's a numbers game ultimately as well, power law, etc. We need to we have more companies in that field that solve the challenges, and then basically there will be also enough capital to fund them, hopefully.
You know, I have a question for my two panelists I'm curious about. And that is, because as I was thinking about this topic and how it plays, I think the real excitement about personalized medicine is not what it means for Tom or Harry or Susan. Personalized medicine, I think, makes overall healthcare better. And I loved your oncology example because I do think that is, but look how far oncology treatment in general has gone, not just for Tom, Sue, and Harry, but in general. I think that's what's excited about how do you guys feel about that?
I mean, I agree. I'm excited about the general impact of personalized medicine for everyone, and for us someday when we need care for various things. So.
I agree to that. I mean, ultimately, why do we do all this? Is make our all lives healthier and better, right? And I think ultimately, personalized healthcare will also reduce the costs, and that's why then actually maybe payers and providers are more open to do it because they understand the evidence behind it and see how they can save money, but ultimately making lives of the patient better.
Michelle, Ryan, Sascha, thank you very, very much for this. Thank you for your attention.
And right on time. Thank you so very much.